Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode. And today I'll be your host, Shalene Chepto, and I am joined by.
Spencer here, a legal practitioner and also a human rights enthusiast. Yep.
I'm Kizito Mora and I'm a practicing psychologist.
So maybe you were wondering, why am I joined by a lawyer and a psychologist today? Well, it's because the topic we're going to discuss today is a bit on the heavy side, and that is we're going to be talking about rape and sexual trauma. So I would like us to begin with legally defining the word rape.
Well, thank you for that. Rape can be defined as the unwillful or the unintentional penetration or even the illegal penetration of your sexual organs to another person's sexual organs without prior informed consent. So consent also still plays a key in rape. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So the few things you've mentioned, Apo, illegal penetration and consent. So I want us to start by illegal penetration because I feel Apo there's like a loophole. So what if you are raped ama there was no penetration? Unajua? Maybe it was a forceful kiss or a grab or unajua? Maybe just being roughed around. Yes. And then number two, what constitutionalizes consent? Like, how do you argue consent? Mm.
Oh, nice. Let me begin by the latter, which one, the one that you've just stated.
Yes.
So, when it comes to informed consent, consent refers to the ability, especially mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. But in Kenya, legally, the age factor also comes into place, where you have the capacity to agree. That's where consent comes in. Okay, and the other question was.
The other question was on penetration, illegal penetration. So, what if there was no like vaginal and penis penetration, but there was still a level of sexual assault?
Well, I think you've already answered it because that will amount to an assault. Remember, rape is a form of sexual violence. When it comes to the Sexual Offences Act, it classifies various forms of sexual violences. Rape is one of them, sexual assault is one of them, defilement is also one of them. So it is really important for us to classify these aspects of sexual violence acts. Okay? So when it comes to rape, there is this element of illegal penetration of your sexual organs into the other person's sexual organs. And back then, people used to think it's from a man to a woman, but actually it can be from a man to man, a woman to woman. Yeah. Nowadays, even spanking amounts to a form of sexual assault.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you. So let's come to the psychologist in the house. I'd like to start from now, let's say the victim, because that's where you mainly come in. So, how do you receive the victim, or where do you start? Ama, how does a victim get to your point? Is it after taking the legal route, or is it immediately after the act? So, take us from there. Where does it start?
Mm. Okay, so generally there's no like systematic way whereby the victim gets to us or me as a psychologist. But usually I think like after they've gone through the legal route, maybe you can tell us more. Like the lawyer will advise for therapy. And this is mainly because of course it's something traumatic and the person like the victim needs to process it. The victim needs to take um like rape, let's since you're talking about rape, like rape is something that affects um, like it alters the brains, chemical. It's more scientific.
Yes.
Yeah, but so now that means you'll not be able to function properly. Because if you're a rape victim, you'll not be able to like move well in public, probably because it triggers, or if you see a man, probably it will trigger you. Yeah, so that's mostly the main reason why therapy is advocated for, so that the victim can be able to go about their day-to-day lives normally without, um, you know,
Sexual trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So can you tell us maybe the different ways that sexual trauma presents itself? Maybe, for example, you can now be maybe sexually dormant. Maybe you don't want to have sex anymore because it's traumatic. Maybe there's a wait, we'll get to that because I just thought of a really good question. Yeah, can you tell us how the trauma can manifest itself?
Psychologically.
Yes.
Yeah, so psychologically, there'll be issues of like memory loss, like also triggers, like they'll not be able to handle their triggers well because, of course, they are not like it's not a one day thing that after a rape victim has gone through the experience that they'll be back to normal. Psychologically, also, it will affect their perception on things to do with, like, for example, men. We've heard of a rape victim saying, "Oh, all men are the same. I cannot sit next to a man because probably he wants to rape me," and things like that. Also, psychologically, it can manifest through just daily interactions, like with people, of course. Yeah, like, so you find the interactions with men are affected, be it their dads, their brothers, like any male figure. Yeah. Vice
So
versa is also true
yes.
because men, we've had cases of men being raped by women. And like you said, also women, yeah. So,
Yes, so it makes you fearful of the attacking gender.
yeah.
Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I've just remembered you
yes.
mentioned fearful. There's also the aspect of anxiety. So you find that the rape victims will have anxiety, probably moving in public places, in the dark, things like that.
Yeah, that's really informative. So, something else I'd like to touch on is is it possible that being gay or being a lesbian is some sort of sexual trauma coping mechanism?
Yes, in today's world, like in 2024, I can say, yeah, it's kind of a coping mechanism. I've had clients who come and say, um, they were assaulted by their uncle when they were younger, and so growing up, they just ascribed more to the female, and that's how they became, you know,
Because of
yeah,
that fear of now the attacking gender,
yeah,
let's call it that way, so that
yeah,
to create gender neutral, because we don't want it to seem like
we're
men
on
are
the
the
women's
only,
side.
yes, men are the only sexual assaulters.
Yeah.
Yes. So you think that, and is it possible that when maybe you go through sexual assault while you're younger, and you have like repressed memory, that might also make you gay or like turn you I'm sorry, it's like I'm pushing an agenda, but yes, I've had that thought, like
Yeah.
with gayism, because sababu you might find maybe somebody was assaulted akiwa mdogo, akona repressed memories, hajui, but it made them maybe a boy who was raped by a man anadhani sexual preference yake ni men because it's something that is subconsciously within them.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yes, it's very possible. You've mentioned what?
Yes.
Suppressing their memories, of course, because they're young, and also unresolved. So when their memories are suppressed, they'll not know that this is trauma I went through. It's just a
Yes.
form of them coping,
Yes.
and so they'll not want to seek help. They'll feel like maybe this is how things
Yes, are
are. Maybe
supposed
it's
to be.
normal, and so that way they'll grow up and
Yeah.
want to
Yes.
lean more.
Yes,
Yeah.
normalize it.
Mm.
Thank you so much. So let's get back to legal. Um, so let's get into a scenario whereby somebody has been raped. What's the first step they should take?
Well, I think, well, initially she mentioned something to do with the route, the proper channel to take. From a legal perspective, we always recommend, first of all, he or she, or rather the victim, should go and seek medical attention first, so that through the medical attention, we are able to come up with the evidence, all right? so that we can ascertain that indeed his or her genital organs, or rather any of her parts, were violated. There was an element of penetration. I think she will explain more from a medical point of view. What we are usually concerned with is the timeline. At what time are you bringing this case to us? Okay, because you realize I've been to cases like I think it must have been 3 weeks ago. Yes, I went to West Pokot, Kapenguria. So I meet with a certain mzee ananiambia, tells me that mjukuu wangu, my grandchild, blah da da da, this happened, and it seems as if he was defiled. Then I am like, okay, when did this happen? Then they're like 2017. Now you realize it's 2017, we are in 2024, 7 years have lapsed, okay? Gathering the evidence, maybe this child might have healed because maybe alikuwa na abrasions or something happened. So collecting the evidence becomes a huge task, okay? Like gathering the evidence to demonstrate that indeed rape took place. It's so difficult, even though the Sexual Offences Act does not give, actually the limitations of the Actions Act does not give a time frame of when you should bring the rape allegations forward. But again, it's also important and sensitive to bring the element of at what time are you bringing this? If it happened like last week and is when today you are reporting, maybe she will explain it, maybe on a traumatic angle, will be able to demonstrate before the court this and this was brought in later. All right. Now she approaching it on a legal point of view. Okay. The courts are usually sensitive with these matters of rape, including the evidence that is brought forth. Where is the victim at? Okay, because we realize in as far as the element of informed consent is there, but there's this element of trauma which she is explaining currently, but there's this part of how can I say it? There's this part of fear, anxiety. Yes. Okay, because if it reaches like 2 weeks, you haven't brought this matter before me, I haven't taken it to court. This lady will just say, okay, I fear for my life because my stepfather said this and this. If I just mention about this, so let us just leave the case. Yeah. So there are so many elements that we need to do to bring it to court. But the sooner, the better. Actually, I always recommend, I always try and educate people huko mashinani. I always tell them, bring it as soon as possible. Less than 24 hours, well and good. Yeah. It's better for the victim to sleep in hospital while undergoing medical examinations than waiting for the whole night, because so many things can happen within that span of one night. Yeah? People can decide to come up with those kangaroo courts. You know, those kangaroo courts where they bring the chief, they bring the pastor, they bring them, they settle like, okay, you will give this one 2 cows, then you're good to go. Yes, set and done. But that leaves again the victim with the trauma. Yes. Yeah.
That's nice. So let's go back to consent, because this is a very, very, people argue this a lot. So in terms of like alcohol, where alcohol is involved, where is consent? Like, let's say for example, you've had this thing, yeah, where maybe you are at the club with a girl, then mkaongea mka kiss mkasema situende tafute mali, then you get there and the girl is like, no, me sidai. So you find so many guys saying ati si alikuwa amekubali, si tulikuwa tushafika kwa kitanda, sijui nini, mbona una change mind. So where do you argue consent, yani like, ama how would you tackle such a case?
Well, when it comes to such a case, what usually happens in the courts, we consider the history. Okay, we ask like, when did you meet this person first? This person will say like, we met sometime last year. How did you meet? Okay, what was the nature of interaction? Okay, and has he or she demonstrated any form of seduction, try to approach you seductively? Then you'll say, yeah, it happened, we were busy chatting and we flirted around, and so that gives a good environment to bring in the aspect of intimacy. Let me call it intimacy for now. All right. So if it so happened that you two decide to go to some joint and kujibamba kidogo, you know, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, then you take those 2 bottles 3 bottles, then you become intoxicated.
Yes.
Okay. The court will ask, was this kind of intoxication voluntary or involuntary? Okay. Involuntary happens when I'm a dude, some lady sees me, decides like, she comes in, then we chat a little bit, then I decide to go to the washrooms. Then when I come back, the lady has put on Pishori. Vietnam. So ameniwekea mchele, has put on mchele in my glass. I take it, then I become dizzy. Then this lady, when the waiter comes, like, this one has black, I'll just sort the bill. Already I'd told her about the car that I've come with, or the cab that I came with. So the work will just take me to the. Okay. Then by the time I'm in my hallucination or in not right state of mind, I'm being given other drugs to aggravate me to engage in her sexually. Okay. So those are the kind of concerns that we usually check. Yeah.
So yani in that case, yeah, sasa when maybe it's a one night stand, you've met that day because you've talked about maybe having history. So when there's no history, you guys have met that day, and then now you are supposed to go and do the deed, but mmoja wenyu akafika point yenye ako like, hey, nika nilikuwa nimelewa, sitaki kuwa hapa. Unaona? So how do you argue that in court?
Okay. As I said earlier, it depends on the circumstances into place. If you decide like, okay, let's go to the lodge, then when you enter the lodge, I'm like, wait a minute, no, this is not me, because usually we are human beings and you always have a second thought, and actually the second thought works. They usually say that. So you reach there in the room, then you're like, okay, I don't want to do this. Then he or she, actually the perpetrator, forcefully, when you
let me ask, is there a way to prove you're forcefully?
Yes, there's a way to prove. To prove. Kai. Ibaridi. Yeah, actually there's a way to prove. One is, you see, when sex happens with a lot of excitement, there's always a preparation prior. I won't go into details to that, all right? There's that one where your body reacts to prepare itself to the element, all right? So for the lady, it always works, because if the lady is not psychologically prepared for the scenario to invite the whatever act that is happening there sexually, definitely we will have some medical or rather health hazards that will happen. We'll have like abrasions on our sexual organs. We'll have like, clothes were torn, because I'm sure you can't just agree that you two meet. You can't just agree that you two meet, then the element of force, you just remove your clothes. Someone can't remove your clothes. There must be a pull and push within. So if your clothes were torn, that amounts to it.
I feel like when we're still talking about consent, okay, personally, in my opinion, I feel like when when someone says no, it should just be no, and ishare hapo. I had a client who was asking for a friend, and she was asking like, what if I'm in a marriage and my husband, my husband wants to, and yeah, wants sex, but I don't want, and then I say no, and he forces me. That's still rape. I think it still is, because no should just mean no. Whether you're in a marriage, whether the person, whichever circumstance it is.
Yes.
I've actually seen that twice in court. It has happened severally, where like people are kind of engaged. They have children, but they are engaged. They're not officially married. But when the man says that cohabitation, by virtue that we stayed together, it amounted to marriage, and therefore I have the capacity to ask for conjugal rights, right? So it's very difficult. I'll have to defer on that. Yes, instances like that happen. I'll agree, it happens. But still, the Kenyan judicial system hasn't reached a point where it fully acknowledges that even in this societal setup or social arrangement of a family, we can have rape between a man who is actually a husband and a wife. Yes. So there are cases that happens, yes, but it's difficult because the man believes that he has the legal right to ask for conjugal rights, the woman also has the legal right to ask for conjugal rights. Yes. So it's difficult to prove, but at the end of the day, as I said initially, it will depend on the kind of circumstance, the evidence that you're bringing forth. If you bring forth an element of torn clothes, maybe a CCTV setup or something to demonstrate there was that forceful and unwanted invitation to have to engage in sexual interaction, then you're good to go. Yeah.
Okay. So something else I'd like to talk about is the ability to consent. You had said something like that. Yes. And I think that comes in with the minors. Okay. Yes. Can you talk about, I don't know what it's called, statutory rape? Ama, what is it called? Whereby an older person, maybe somebody who's above 18, engages in maybe willful sex, but this person does not have the capacity to consent. Yes. Can you talk about that?
Oh, that amounts to defilement. Defilement happens where someone who is not, hasn't reached the age of majority. That is, in Kenya, it's 18 years, right? So if you are over 18 and you engage with someone who is less than 18, that will amount to defilement, because Kenyan legal system affirms or actually acknowledges that whoever is under the age of majority does not have the full capacity to reason well. In other words, they say that does not have full prior informed consent, because they haven't reached the age where they are able to understand this and this is not good at this time. So the Kenyan legal system always protects them and classifies that as informed consent. Although tumefika era yenye watu wamechanuka bana. People, we are living in an era where someone is 17, 18 already ashajua dansi ya yeah. So it just amounts to defilement. Yes. And there's so many ways of you picturing defilement, including the birth certificate, including the age gap, age barrier, because we've had very interesting scenarios where it is someone aged 18, a man aged, a boy aged 18, or is turning 18 in 2 days' time and engages in a sexual activity with a lady who is 17 years old. So what happens in that scenario? All right. So Kenyan legal system has been silent, though I think we'll reach a point where we'll be able to classify. Yes.
And what is the jail term ama sentencing for your engaging with a minor?
Minimum is always 10. But if you have enough evidence to prove the aggravation, to prove that indeed the victim really suffered, the kind of environment the victim was placed in, and also the age, because the younger, the more grievous the sentence, right? So if someone is quite close to the age of majority, it could be roughly around 10 years minimum. But if someone was younger, let's say is below 3 years, below 2 years, yeah, people are insane actually outside there. So if someone maybe is 2 years, then actually you might end up facing life imprisonment. Yeah.
So let's go to the psychological side of it, Tena. So I'd like to know, how do you take a victim through is counseling, and how do you get them back to their previous self before going through the assault?
So first of all, it's important that the client wants to, to go back to being themselves, because they have to put in the work. Mm. So your question is
What's the process? Are there like what do you call, like something like a practice, some like unajua, like ways you can guide them, like go do this, breathe this time many times a day, if it kama hizo
yeah. So that's generally, it's going to be trauma counseling. So we are trying to help the client move past the traumatic situation in a comfortable way, like, so that, like I had said earlier, they can be able to go about their daily activities normally. So trauma counseling mostly involves like relaxing the client, because some of them have complain of like flashbacks, of the traumatic event. So you just want to teach them like grounding techniques to help them, calm down, like the one you are saying, breathing, deep breathing, there's also an aspect of letter writing where it's personally a technique that I like because it helps the client, because obviously they cannot face the perpetrator. So you ask them to write down their feelings, yani ku release everything in that letter, and once they are done, to burn it, and that is a sign of like letting go, trying to move past the traumatic event. There's also role playing where, like, if you're my client and in a therapy setup, so I'll be the perpetrator and you're of course the victim. So you tell me, like, release everything on me. Yeah, so it's just trauma counseling basically is a therapeutic technique to help the client release. And once they release, they slowly come to terms with, like, this is my reality, but I have to move past it. Yeah, that's mostly how we do it. Yeah.
Okay, so something else is now moving away from the victim. Let's
Mhm.
go into the psychology of the perpetrator. What causes this? What ignites these feelings within somebody? Enye anafika a point enye they need sex forcefully.
Mm.
Mm. Is it a power dynamic? Is it sexual frustration? Ni, ni,
Mm.
ni?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
including the ones that you've mentioned. Just to add, maybe sometimes some people who probably have been diagnosed with certain mental health conditions like personality disorders, drug and substance use, those could predispose somebody to to become a perpetrator for rape. Yeah. So I think everything just it's encompassed in the mental health disorders like depression. Of course, when somebody is depressed, they'll want an outlet. The personality disorders. Of course, we also talked about substance use. Of when they're not in their right state of mind, they'll not think, normally. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And just to add on that, you also have the social environmental factors.
Yes.
When you talk of let's say something to the African traditional religion, there are religions which people have subscribed to that tells them, you know what, if I do this and this, it will,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, like
So
sleeping with a virgin
yes, sleeping with a
is yeah.
virgin, it will give you money, something of the sort. Those kululu kalala things. So also the kind of environment of the perpetrator could be a huge trigger.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
where someone was brought up, how they were brought up, the kind of culture they lived in. So there are so many things, like, you see, just to digress, something like FGM, right? Even if you tell this woman who was subjected to FGM, like, please don't take your daughter to this and this and this, man, they'll still resort. It's like, next week unaenda ushago. They're going to
Yeah.
face the same tribulation. Yeah.
Mm.
Wow, I think we've exhausted this topic vizuri, and I think it will be very informative to our viewers for maybe somebody who's gone through this and maybe can't get legal help, they can get psychological help. Unajua, si all the time that ati mtu kufungwa ndo itakusaidia kuheal. The healing has to come from within
Within.
yourself. Yeah. So I think somebody who has watched this can know if it happens to me, because it hasn't happened, I can take the legal route and then come into the psychological side of it. And if it has happened to somebody maybe 5 years ago, they can just do psychological therapy and all that to help them uh, heal. So let me just get parting shots. Alafu, we can end there.
Parting shots. Rape, if you are a victim and you have been subjected to sexual violence, not necessarily rape, or if actually rape inclusive, kindly just try and reach out to each and every individual that you can find resort to. It could be a health professional, the earlier the better. It could be the police, it could be the legal fraternity which I participate in. Kindly reach out, the sooner the better. We really need you, and we really need that mindset of yours. Mental health matters. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, on my side, I just want to emphasize that no means no, whether you're married, whether you're not, whether like no means no. When somebody has not given consent, yeah, just know that that means no. And also nobody has like nobody deserves to go through rape. Like it's not something nice. And so nobody should feel like, oh, maybe I I led this person on or something like that, or is it because of the way I've dressed? It's just a societal issue that needs to be corrected, and nobody deserves to go through it.
Yes, I think what I can close with is also because I think according to data also, not that I'm being biased to men are the highest contributors to rape cases. They are the top assaulters, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So I think one thing we should change within the male culture is hii story ya kufunga macho. If it's your friend doing it, if it's your brother doing it, unajua men have this kind of thing, yeah, like yes, brother code, yes. So I think call out your friends who do these things. Ukiona beshte yako kila time ukienda out yetu anatokanga na ule dem mwenye haoni fanye nini, like somebody who's highly intoxicated, you can call out your friend or just avoid them or mshtaki. I mean, be brave enough, mshtaki. So I guess that's it for today. Leave a comment, subscribe, talk to us,
Buy
follow
a
us on
t-shirt,
yes, buy a
a
t-shirt,
hoodie.
a hoodie, a notebook,
Yeah.
kofia, mug, tuko na nini inaitwaje
Merch.
match mob kabisa, and then follow us on IG. Hapo ndo utainteract na sisi on a daily. Podtail Podcast na Podtail Podcast TV. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.